Let's create a database example using Visual Studio 2015 Community. So File, New Project, and this one will happen to be a, well, let's make it a C# Windows form example. So, okay on that. So what I need to do is make sure that I can create a database. So check to make sure you've got Server Explorer. If you don't have it, if you don't see it on here anywhere, then make sure you go back to your install of Visual Studio and get it installed so that we can create a database. If you've got Community or Professional, you'll be able to go back and install that and make it part of your Visual Studio IDE. Okay, so first we're going to go and add a new data source. Database, dataset, connection. What we're going to do is that we're going to create our own database. So let's say let's give our database a name. Database example. Make this our first one, and click OK. And it says that doesn't exist. Do you want to create this database? Yes, we do. So what we have is that we have a project that we're building, a Windows Form application, and we've also created a database. Now we need to make sure that we have these two linked together. So it says the connection you selected uses a local database file that is not in the current project. Do you want to add it? Yes, we do. So we've added this to our project, and we have a connection to this database. It's a string. Here's the name of this string. Can I go back and show you what the string looks like? Well, it's a it's a connection saying, okay, you've got your project that you've created, Windows Form project. Here is the string that tells this project where the database is located. Okay, so we've got that string. Retrieving database information. Right now it's a database that we've just created. It says it's empty. We know that. So let's click Finish. Now let's go over here to Windows Explorer, Server Explorer, and Database Example 1. That's the name of the database we created. So again, make sure that you've got Server Explorer set up. You may need to go back and install the extensions to get this working, but so I'm going to go to tables, and right now there are no tables. Now, database is made up of tables, and these tables can be related to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and create my first table. I'm going to right click and say add a table to this database. So creating a new table, first thing I want to do is that I want to rename this. So I don't want the table to be called table. How about TBL example? All right. And it generated an ID for us, and this little key means that this is going to be a unique value when we start to enter data into our database, into our tables. And that's a good way to track information so that we don't repeat the same information over and over again. And in this example, let's make a field or a column, and let's call it first name. And let's let's use variable characters, or varchar. In this case, the maximum of 50 characters. We could reduce that if we wanted to. Allow nulls. No, let's force every field to have, every first name field to have a value in it. We're not going to have a default value. There's not going to be a default first name that comes up every time. Okay, so if we've got first name, let's do a last name. And again, varchar. And we'll leave it at 50. We're going to force there to be data in there. We're not going to have a default value for last name. And let's make the last field, the last column, age. And for that, we'll make this an integer value and force there to be something in that. Okay, that's the only thing we're going to put into this table and into this database. So we're all done. And so let's go ahead and update this. And update the database. You notice in our database the only thing we have is we've got one primary key. No constraints, indexes, foreign keys, or triggers. Just a simple database. It creates this for us. It generates the SQL for us, and it's transact SQL. Since this is Microsoft, it will generate this, create this for us. All right, what else do we need to do? Okay, this is saved, and let's go back to Server Explorer, and our table isn't showing up, so let's refresh this. So there's our table. Right click, let's expand this and see that we have our 4 fields. Our ID, which is our unique field, first name, last name, and age. Alright, so I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to show table data. And there is no table data yet, so it's going to allow me to go ahead and put in the data for us, and I'm going to enter in a unique ID, so I'm going to call this one 1. Okay, so we've got some data values that are in there. So make sure we've got all this saved. And now what we want to do is let's go back to our Server Explorer, and I'm going to right click on the table and I'm going to say which, and let's see, right click and show table. Let's do a new query. Let's do a query on this. So we'll generate a query, and let's see, let's select everything from our table TBL example. Let's run that first. Let's see what that looks like. Run that and we get all of our data. Okay, let's run it again. Change it to where the age is Um, greater than 100. Let's try that. Select statement, there should be 1 in there. And we get the 1 that's there. Okay. Let's see. We've got that. Save all. It wants to know where to save the query statement. Let's put it in. Let's see, what did I call this one? Example of a database. Put it in the bin folder. Okay, let's go to data source. And let's go back to our form. So we've got our project, and with our project we want to connect to our database, so let's go to data sources and data set, add a new data source, database, data set. We've got our connection string here, and that's right, connecting to our database, retrieving that. And let's make a data source connecting to this table. Let's expand this and see that we've got all these. So yeah, that's going to be our data source. Once that generates, and there we've got it. So here's an easy way to add it to our project. Let me pin this down. I'm going to expand this just a bit. Close this. And I'm just going to drag this on here. Now what I added was the data grid view. Let me move this around a bit. Now this is a Windows Form application, so I could dress this up a bit with some labels and say what this database was and a lot of other things. But let's just run it this way. So I'm going to go debug, start debugging. And we get our application. And you'll notice that I can move through the data. See if I can change some of the information. So I can edit the data. Okay. Got the ID, first name, last name. I need to expand this. Let me close this. Go back to my design window. Move this up a bit. Okay. Let's change the properties here to maybe it's a little easier to see if we change the background color. Oops. Okay, now let's try debug, start debugging. Maybe that's a little easier to see. Oh, and this one I did change, but I didn't save it. Okay, so update the database. There we go. Alright. Okay, and there's my data. So let's do things a little bit different. I'm going to make sure I've got this selected. Delete this, and now I'm going to go in, and this time I'm going to change it to details. Now let's drag it in. Drag it in, and there we've got things a little bit different. Okay, and I can change these if I want. Click off of those. Can move those around. I can change the width of those if I want. Individually I can move these around. And I don't know if this looks any better, but it's just to show you that what can be done. Okay, now let's try this again. Debug, start debugging. And now we've got a database where we can look at these, each one of these rows of data individually. And if we make changes, just need to make sure that we'd save this. If there's one that we don't want, what we can do is delete that data. Okay, and if we want to add a new data item, say we want to go with number 5. We can add that. Okay, so we've created a database, we've added it to our project, and now we can add the information, subtract the information, or make changes to it. And that'll do it.